by this time, the notion of marching on Washington as part of the political repertoire of citizens and activists was very well established. And so it made sense to do it. And it made sense to do a big national demonstration. It would be a sort of counterpoint to the very well publicized and seen individual acts of, or group acts of confrontations that you were seeing in Birmingham with the hoses, that this is sort of like almost counterpoint. And likewise to the the continuing tradition of activism in the North that often was focused sometimes on lobbying for gradual political change and sometimes on lobbying against, Woolworths because they were discriminating in the South. So you have this kind of like, let's all come together in one place, almost using the fact that the Capitol itself was a compromise between the South and the North to focus on it and to reuse spaces that had become so powerfully political.
This is the nation's capital. This is where the Congress was. People are saying we need national legislation. And if you need national legislation, then you go to the National Congress.
People criticized the idea of having the march on a work day and wondered about that. But the organizers' point was that, well, if we're trying to confront Congress, we want Congress to be in session. And if we came on the weekend, they wouldn't be there.
One of the things that the March on Washington does so effectively is it nationalizes the movement by saying that we are not going to contain the nation's problems in the South. We're going to go to the seat of power in the nation's capital to have this discussion.
Washington, D.C. is the nation's capital, and if there was going to be change, there needed to be change in the federal laws. And so, yes, you could demonstrate in Birmingham as was done. You could demonstrate in New Orleans, Louisiana as was done. But there was a need for federal legislation. And if you try to go around and put out these little fires here and there, that would have zapped all of the energy of the civil rights organizations and their energy, their resources.
3 reasons not to have it in the South. It was clear that the leadership wanted a national stage, and they felt that the nation's capital would give them that special cachet. Number 2, where you had the District of Columbia police who feared a race riot the day of the march, and the story is that not only did they not have a race riot, but even crime went down that day. Southern police forces could not be trusted to do an objective job in terms of protecting either the leadership or the marchers, or keep the people who would actually do them physical harm away from the festivities. And I think the final thing too was that it was important for the foot soldiers in the movement to see that they were marching beyond the width of their own shoulders, that they were in fact engaged in a great national crusade. And the best way to symbolize that was to do it at the nation's capital.
Well, I think that the thing that's really important for us to understand about why people historically have done marches on Washington. One, it's the seat of power. It's where legislative change happens. And also, it's where you can get TV cameras to come. I think that today, it's really surprising for us to think about news media not being somewhere where action is happening. But still in 1963, coverage of the civil rights movement is really in its infancy. And so I think that the March on Washington brings national and international attention to the struggle for civil rights.
I think they designed the speech partly around a stage and a series of speeches, in part because they quickly come to realize how important the broadcast and the television coverage of the march is going to be. And that is an encouragement to a different type of march. If you're oriented towards a march in which you're actually focused on spectators, which most of the earlier marchers were, in which your expectation is that it's about local people coming to sue you in a national cause, that's one thing. This becomes, they pretty much know there aren't going to be spectators. There's going to be massive numbers of protesters, and they're going to have live television coverage. And that helps shift the demands of the day. It makes the movement through space, which is traditionally a huge part of political marches, less important, and instead the way in which the body of people is interpreted by the people who are speaking more important.